So let's start off a little bit esoteric and let me ask you the question. In your opinion, what does a good snack need to have so that we as humans feel nourished by the snack?
Great question. I think a good snack ideally should be, vibrant, colorful, fun to eat. It also should be planet forward in the sense of sustainability.
Mm,
And also, it should nourish us. Eating the colors of the rainbow is so important. Different colors of fruits and vegetables have phytonutrients, vitamins, and minerals that nourish us from within. And I think it's important to make our palette as colorful as possible.
mm, mm. So it's nourishing for us physically, but there's also something that delights our eye, delights all of our senses.
Absolutely.
Mm,
And I'm a super taster. So it's very important for anything that I eat to have a good profile in terms of flavor depth, texture, mouthfeel. Having a good top, middle, and base note of
mm.
a recipe is so important.
What is a super taster? I've never heard of that before. What is that?
Yes. A super taster is one in four people. You might be a super taster as
Mm,
well. They sense better, deeper flavors, and
mm,
the nose and the tongue, taste buds are very connected. So these super tasters, they smell and taste in more depth, and they are usually hired in food, as a food technologist or a nose for a perfume house. So
mm.
a lot of noses for say Estee Lauder or Chloe perfumes, like they are usually super tasters as well. So they sense more taste than most people.
Ooh.
Mm.
Well, I don't think that I am, but I think it would be super fun to be one. I love that you are. Um, so let's step back. You said that well, you didn't say this, but we know this from doing the research, is that you grew up in Singapore. A lot of us have heard of this. A lot of us have only heard of it. We haven't been there, although I've had the good fortune of being there. But can you describe the Lion City, which I didn't realize that's another name for Singapore, the Lion City? What is it like through your eyes? What does Singapore look and taste and feel like to you?
A great question. Singapore is called the Lion City because the first British explorer, which found this island in the middle of nowhere, the first thing he saw was a lion. That's why it's called Lion City. So our flag actually has a lion and a tiger
Huh.
next to the medallion. So Singapore is a very unique country. We don't have any kind of mountains, landscapes, natural resources. So it's such a small country as well. You drive from one end to the other in about half an hour. It's a
Mm,
tiny, tiny country. And, because we have no resources, human talent is the most important thing. And our national pastime is actually food. As a culture, we are so food obsessed,
huh.
and it's placed right in the middle between East and West. So we have so many different culinary cultures from around the world that is mixed into this fascinating melting pot.
Mm, mm. And is there a sight or a sound or a smell or a taste that always reminds you of home? What is that for you? What's home
Mm,
for you in that
yeah,
way?
so another name for Lion City is the Garden City.
Mm,
A lot of our land is covered with rainforests and trees and beautiful flowers. So every time I, smell the air in Singapore, it always smells like flowers.
uh-huh.
Our street food is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so is our botanic gardens. So, whenever I am in that tropical ambiance with like grilled satay meats with mixed with the amazing smell of flowers in the air, that always reminds me of
Mm,
Singapore.
that's home for you. Mm.
Yes.
So, um, how did you know in 2015 you set out on a tour of the world? So, almost 10 years ago now. How did you know? How did you feel that it was time for you to leave home and go on this world tour?
Yes, I'm really grateful for Singapore. It taught me so much. It gave me a world-class education.
Mhm.
But, then again, it's a very small country, and I've always imagined what it's like to be in a remote place, an exotic location in different parts of the world. I really felt like I needed to expand my horizons,
Mm,
take some calculated risks and really see the world for what it is. My father passed away when I was 3, and
mm.
being brought up by a single mom as an only child, I don't have any siblings to play with, and it's always, books have always taken me to different locations, and my imagination really propelled me to want to see other cultures, explore different cities, try different kinds of foods, and really push the boundaries in terms of, what I can do and contribute as a human being.
What was one of the books that captured your imagination? What was a book that was especially meaningful?
I would say like Whatever You Think the Opposite by Paul Arden. He's one of my favorite authors. So he
Huh.
had a long career in the creative advertising
Mhm.
space, and he ended the book with to astonish someone, to astonish me, like in the sense of creative agencies. There's so much sound and noise and so much distractions and on a daily basis. So for a brand to really stand out, to create work that is astonishing, like that was my biggest takeaway from his book. And I
Mm,
reread it like 17 times. I love it so much.
I love that,
Every time I
17 times.
feel, yeah,
Sorry, finish what you're gonna say. Every time you feel what?
every time I feel like whenever I have a crossroads when I'm trying to decide to go one way or the other, I reread the book because it inspires me to not settle for mediocrity or the
Mhm,
status quo, but it's actually a lot safer to choose the more
mm,
risky road and astonish someone, and that really is a way to really leave legacy
mm.
and create more impact as a brand.
So that book is a touchstone for you.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. On your world tour that you did, what was one place that you went, one or two places that you went that captivated you?
My favorite country in the world, I've been to about 56 countries now.
Mhm.
I think my favorite in the world is Nouvelle Caledonian. So
Huh.
New Caledonia it has the largest, longest lagoon in the world, the most number of black and white striped sea snakes, and the tallest lighthouse in the world. It's really off the beaten
Mhm.
tourist path, which I love.
Mhm.
The beaches are always so remote. The national language is French, and it's stunning. Like I climbed up to the top of this lighthouse and I looked down, and there was really heartbreaking beauty, like every
Mhm.
single color imaginable of coral reefs, fish. It's just a kaleidoscope of colors, and I can't even come close to believing that a place like that exists because it's so surreal. I
Wow.
think it is probably what paradise looks like. It's really, really stunning. I could live there forever.
I'm thinking the Tourism Bureau of New Caledonia. It's New Caledonia, right?
Yes, New
They sh
Caledonia.
they should hire you because you just gave us such an amazing commercial for them. I'm like, "I want to go there." It does sound stunning. All
Yes.
right, let's talk about confetti snacks. So, like all not all, but most good business ideas, this came to you because you knew exactly what you wanted, but it didn't yet exist. So tell us more about your experience of mountain climbing and how this helped you bring this idea of confetti snacks to life.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of coincidences and serendipity, in the sense that I'm a very adventurous person. I love paragliding, hiking, mountain climbing, just experiencing different layers of travel. A
Mhm.
very wise dive master once told me, to see the world properly, you should see it from different perspectives, like from the air, which I
Mm,
do from paragliding, underwater by scuba diving, and on land by hiking and mountain climbing.
yeah.
So if you see different facets of the world and really travel in a spherical way, that's how you really see a lot of depth of a country. So
Mm,
I've took his advice, and I have been hiking a lot, exploring in different dimensions, and I always feel very not wowed by the snacks that I take. In terms of like protein bars are very boring, and
mm,
then there's potato chips that give me a very sore throat. So I started thinking like if I were to create a ideal snack, what would that look like? And so I was actually hiking in British Columbia in the mountains of Canada, and I was really feeling very homesick. Singapore is one of the best food cultures in the world. So I started going to farmers markets and, gathering up different fresh produce, slicing them up and baking them in my kitchen, and then, infusing them with flavors that I miss so much from my home in
Huh.
Singapore. And I started distributing that to my neighbors and friends. Everyone loved it and told me that if this was available in a supermarket, they would buy it. So that answered my billion-dollar question on whether to launch this brand. As long as I have a market who can pay hard-earned money for it, I
Yeah.
think there's a proper business there.
I love that you didn't say $1 million, you said $1 billion. I love that. Okay, so you also, in addition to your wanting to have a snack that was not boring, that reminded you of home, your confetti snacks, which by the way are so delicious. I love them so much. We have a whole box in our house. I especially love the mushrooms, I have to say. You tackle the pervasive issue of food waste. So, just here in the United States, the USDA says about 30 to 40% of the total food supply gets wasted. So, can you talk about just the mechanics of how really serviceable food ends up in a landfill? Because it can't all be, food that's gone bad. So, what's happening from a dynamic ecosystem perspective that's causing this?
Yes, yeah, that's a great problem that is actually facing the world today. We have about one third of edible produce, or 2.9 trillion pounds of edible produce that get thrown away every year,
Wow.
simply because of aesthetic reasons. They are
Mm.
imperfect, or as they say in Britain, wonky. So maybe the shape is wrong, the size
Yeah.
is wrong. It's not perfect exacting standards that is required by the supermarket,
Mm.
or it could be due to a crop surplus. So farms, plantations, they don't necessarily, they are not able to predict and forecast demand perfectly in terms of what the retailers need. So
Mm.
as a result, they always produce in surplus to meet demand, and
Mm.
then they are stuck with a bunch of, perishable produce that can't be sold in time. They have a shelf life of less than 1 week, and then they end up in a landfill, and there's a lot of it. And
Yeah.
as they decompose, they release greenhouse emissions and methane that contributes to global warming.
Wow.
So, and then we also realized that 8.6 million people die from starvation and hunger every year, while we mindlessly throw away one third of edible produce just because our supply chain systems are not perfect. They're
Mm.
not efficient. So that is the biggest thing that upcycling is trying to address. If we can take these surpluses or imperfect foods, and really elevate it to, amazing culinary experiences and amazing assortments of food and beverage, I think we have a big way to reinvent this category and really resolve some big problems facing the
Mhm.
world today.
So one of the ways you're tackling this is by taking food that may be imperfect or wonky, as you said, and using that food that might otherwise get disposed. It sounds like also some of the work that you're doing is to help people who are starving. What does that charitable piece of your organization look like?
Yeah, so I like to think of it as a Robin Hood approach where we launch in very expensive countries like
Mhm.
Amsterdam, United States, Singapore, London and Austria. And then we sell these incredibly delicious baked snacks to the consumer so they have a healthier, delicious snack to snack on. At the same time, we take part of our profits to feed the hungriest people in the world who are in refugee camps. They may be facing genocides, refugee crises. They might be displaced because of natural disasters.
Mhm.
So we work with huge humanitarian organizations like uh, the World Food Program by United Nations, Red Cross, UNICEF, and really, feed the people who are so vulnerable and so food insecure that they don't actually have, a proper meal on their table every day. So how can we touch these vulnerable communities? Food banks, homeless shelters, even food deserts, so that we can really get them emergency food relief.
Yeah, so good. All right, so I'm going to ask you kind of a fun question. Do you have a junk snack food that you'd admit to on our show? So Alex, our producer, who you just met before we started, his junk food Achilles heel is Swedish fish. Um,
Oh, wow. The gummy? It's
yeah,
the
the
gummy,
gummy
right?
Swedish fish,
Oh.
that is his Achilles junk heel. Achilles junk heel. It's Achilles heel junk food. Mine would be gummy bears, actually, or chocolate chip cookies. But do you have a junk snack
Oh.
food that you would like to confess on air?
Yes. So most people have a sweet tooth. I have two. You know, I love sweet food a lot.
Uh-huh.
So I would say I'm really obsessed with creme brulee. I've tried I
Oh,
think more
okay.
than 500 creme brulees around the world, and I try it in different restaurants. I do have a favorite one that I found in the world trip that I did in Queenstown in New Zealand, overlooking the lake, and that was like the best creme brulee ever. Like it was so, you know, creamy and rich, and then like the crack when you use your spoon to hit the top
Yeah.
of the caramel, it was perfect sound. So that was really stunning, and the vanilla beans pot that you can see as well.
What was the name of the restaurant, Betty? Do you remember where you had it?
I can't remember it, but I think it's a chocolate. It's a chocolatier actually. So
Mm,
the chocolatier also served the desserts and coffee and ice cream.
yeah.
So that creme brulee was one of the best I ever tasted in New
Okay,
Zealand.
that's your one sweet tooth. What's your other sweet tooth that you were going to mention?
Ferrero Rocher.
Oh
I
yeah.
like to eat it by the layers. So I eat the
Uh-huh.
nutty part first, then I eat the the big part, and then I go down. So I eat it layer by layer, which all my
Oh,
friends find me really weird and bizarre. And I take really long to eat the Ferrero Rocher.
you're relishing it. Oh, so good.
Yes.
All right. So confetti snacks proves its value in Singapore. Then you decide. You said that you have this Robin Hood approach. You're going to, you went to Amsterdam, you went to London. Now you're in the United States. So what did expansion look like in the United States from a very practical standpoint? So, first planning meeting to American shelves. Can you just walk us through this from a business standpoint, what you did?
Yes, absolutely. So, as a Singaporean, my first minimum viable product or MVP was actually launched in Singapore in pop-ups.
Mhm.
Then, we got the attention of the government who gave us the first check to start the first batch from the factory and scale it up in terms of production. So more venture capital came into play and more impact angels as well. And then, testing in Singapore is great because the geography is so small, tiny,
Mhm.
tiny country. And to test it, launch it in all the supermarkets, we know that it has significant traction. And then once we have saturated that market, the next step would be really to focus on, the largest snack market in the world, which is United States. It's the largest snack and consumer market in the world. They are obsessed with plants. They love plant-based things, especially after the pandemic, where
Mhm.
people want permissible indulgence. So I decided to move to New York City. And then, I was paragliding in San Francisco and I love the weather there more. So I actually moved to San Francisco last summer. And, I really feel like the food culture is so strong here,
Mhm.
especially in the East and West Coast.
Mhm.
There's so much diversity, so many different nationalities who live here. That, it kind of reminds me of Singapore in the sense that people here really celebrate diversity and inclusion.
Mhm.
And I felt like to really make my mark as a global brand, I do have to move to a place where the change makers live.
Mhm.
So US is a natural step. And then we decided to focus on like how can we become a national brand fast. We started off by supplying to gourmet stores in independent stores, and then Walmart loved the snacks a lot, so they decided to launch us nationwide this summer. And then we started distributing to Netflix offices. They
Mhm.
had a vote on which is their favorite flavor, which turns out to be shiitake mushroom chips in Thai green curry. So we are now supplying to all the offices for Netflix, and then started signing on with different retailers like Heinen's, Home Goods, Molly Stone's, Festival Foods, GNC Mexico, and the key food distributors like UNFI, KeHE, Pot Foods, and continuing our success in the independents that meet us, like
Mhm.
Mustard Seed Market in Ohio.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I do feel like that's also propagated with a publicity dimension as well. Food and Wine magazine raved us as their perfect road trip snack for summer. We got featured on Forbes and as a case study on Harvard Business Review.
Mhm.
We also got, applauded by the Michelin Guide
Mm.
in terms of our movement, in terms of really celebrating veggies and fruit and fighting food waste. So I do feel like jumping on the bandwagon of sustainability and really creating something very innovative, very
Yeah.
extraordinary in terms of taste is probably one of the strongest USPs that we have.
Yeah. So Betty, it sounds like you've had sort of success after success after success. What's an experience that you've had that was a crucible moment, that it was just really, really hard for you and tested who you are as an entrepreneur and a human being?
Wow, I had some really dark moments, and thanks for asking this. I had some really dark moments in this journey.
Mm,
I think, uh, uh, it's very easy to be a critic in this world.
mm,
When I started, a lot of people didn't believe it's gonna work, because there's so much competition in the snack space. It's
yeah.
brutal. It's really cutthroat competition. Every day you are trying to fight for shelf space. There are people who monopolize shelf space, and
Mhm,
they do have billions of dollars. They have more money than God. It's very hard to compete against that. So for an entrepreneur to take a leap of faith and do something that they know is very risky, they know the chances of failure is very high. In fact, 1% of startups actually make it after the first 5 years.
mm,
This is our 6th year now, and we are thankful to be alive.
mhm,
But I do feel like the darkest moments where you are dealing with naysayers, people who don't
mhm,
believe in you, VCs or investors who doubt your vision and your strategy, and to still stick to your guns and do it anyway. In fact, my whole move from Singapore to US, half of my investors were not happy with that decision.
mm.
They're like, why go to such a dangerous territory? You should stay put in Singapore where it's safe and it's your comfort zone. I do have people who doubt me, and it's very important that if you have a vision in your mind, to just follow through anyway and keep going. I think that's very important. Like, the brand shouldn't lose the heart of the entrepreneur ever,
Yeah.
and we
So I'm
shouldn't
wondering,
compromise for anyone. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm curious. So in that moment when someone is just like, what are you doing? This doesn't make sense. You're never going to succeed. What do you do? Like, what do you tell yourself? Do you go run? Do you go hike? Do you listen to something? You probably read the Paul Arden book again. Do you like what's your routine or your ritual when you get to that place of like they are questioning me and they're questioning me, so I'm questioning myself. I've got to get myself out of this mindset. What are some things you do to get yourself back on the track that you've set for yourself?
Yeah, great question. The first thing I do is to find the closest cat to me. I'm a huge cat person, so I pick up the
I saw a cat wandering behind you. I love that. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so yeah, cats are my biggest teacher in my life,
Mm,
because they don't need validation from anyone. They do exactly as they please. They break rules, and I do feel like that's the point where I remind myself that I don't need anyone's
mm,
validation. My
interesting.
dad passed away when he was my age at
Yeah.
36, and he died with so many unfulfilled dreams and goals. It's a privilege to be under that pressure. It's a
Mm,
privilege to have that pressure to, I've passed burnout so many times before.
mhm.
um and I really remind myself that I'm not going to be in this world for a long time. I have a finite time in this world,
Yeah,
and it's very important to listen to my own heart rather than someone else's direction.
yeah,
And if they don't agree with me, I don't need their validation.
yeah.
So it's like my own project. This is my own baby. I'm going to do as I please. And
Mhm,
cats teach me a lot in terms of not caring what anyone thinks, and forming your own rules. And I do feel like to take decisive risk is very important, to reinvent a category, to disrupt a category. Like, nobody actually got anywhere by not going against the flow. So I
yeah,
think that's
yeah.
that's very important.
I think it's fascinating. So I'm hearing two things. Number one is that, and we have two cats, and it's true. They don't care what you think. They just don't. They're going to do what they're going to do, which is fascinating. And then the second thing that's interesting of what you said is that your father, when he died when you were 3, he was 36 years old. You have a greater sense of finiteness, or um, that time is limited. So there's this constraint that you feel that maybe other people, like you need to live your life because you're not, you actually, even though we all know intellectually we're not going to live forever, if we haven't had an experience like you've had, we still think we're going to.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people live in a safe zone. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like they think they're going to live forever.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think death is a really good wake up call because
Mhm.
it tells you that, hey, you know, you're not going to be here forever. And I climbed the Grand Canyon
Mhm.
last week, and you know, these rocks are 2 billion years old,
Yeah.
and all these layers of time, like, you know, our life in comparison, it finishes in a blink of an eye.
Mhm.
Like, why are we taking all this for granted? We should be taking every risk that we can and
Yeah.
really actualize every dream that we have
Yeah.
here.
So good. All right. So, just a few more questions. So, your company, you said you started it 6 years ago. It has 10x, it has 100x. You just shared with me a number of accolades that it's received. And I'm sure that you have a few moments where you pinch yourself and go, wow, wow, this is amazing. And I also wonder, how do you nourish yourself, your soul, and your spirit, and just keep yourself grounded so that you can continue to do this vision, continue to, deal with the naysayers, but also to not read the press clippings and sort of believe that you're, sort of better than you are as a human being? Like, what do you do to tether yourself and just stay true to Betty?
Yes, absolutely. So, you know, we have got really amazing growth so far. You know, going from tens of stores to 3,900 now in 8 countries. And then, you know, distributors from different parts of the world
Yeah.
requesting for containers of the goods. I think that has really, um, you know, shown that the product is tastes great, and it's really having stickiness and traction in the markets that we are
Yeah.
launching in. So that is actually very uplifting because every
Mhm.
time, you know, as an entrepreneur, you are the chief firefighter of the company. You're fighting a different fire every day. There are
Yeah.
so many fires, and then there are, you know, people who are doubting you, against you, lots of critics around, you know. And I do feel like it's very important. These little wins really motivate me.
Mm.
I'm a huge runner as well. I run about 5 miles every evening.
Mm.
So when I'm in a running zone, it helps me decompress. And most importantly, I would say, you know, a huge, you know, a lot of gratitude to my team. You know, my team, they're all individually all a lot more intelligent than me. They
Mm.
have launched a lot of brands like Honesty, Vita Coco, Pop Chips, you know, Vitamin Water, and you know, being around such creative geniuses, you know, people who have really taken unknown brands to billion-dollar exits, you know, I really feel like, um, you know, and they are so humble as well. They are so grounded and down to earth. And that makes me want to be a better human being. Like,
Yeah.
it's in the sense that they have accomplished so much more than I would ever be able to accomplish. And
Oh,
they,
interesting.
and yet they are so grounded, and they are the most humble people I've ever met.
Yeah.
You know, like Alexander, our chairman, you know, Michael Kravitz, our
Mhm.
creative director,
Mhm.
you know, Andre, our board member.
Mhm.
They are all, you know, individually so much more intelligent than I am, and they are so grounded, and that
Mm.
inspires me every day.
Mm. Interesting. So one thing is that you nourish yourself because you're building something that's meaningful to you. So when you see it grow, it's like seeing your baby, your child grow. So that's nourishing. The running, get rid of the cortisol, manage yourself physically. And then interesting what you said is you're around people that are so smart and brilliant, and recognizing all that they bring and the talent that they have to what you're doing. It allows you to just appreciate, but also get a sense of, like, here's what I'm good at, here's what I'm not. And so that sort of partnership keeps you grounded as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we have weathered every storm, you know,
Yeah.
every high and low of a
Yeah.
roller coaster to get together.
Yeah.
And it's fun. You know, these people have became really good friends,
Mhm.
and it's really fun to launch something. And you know, the thing is, we are pushing against potato chips, and
Yeah.
if we can find exotic fruits and vegetables and really elevate them and really astonish the consumer and show them that, hey, this can taste so much better than, a junk extruded puff or a potato chip. Like that's fun to do. Like
Yeah.
working with all these talented chefs, food technologists, learning from all these people from around the world and their cultures as well. Like this has been a really adventurous journey.
Yeah, it is so fun to go, when I want to take a break and I want a snack, to be able to go eat one of your confetti snacks and have it be delicious and nourishing. And I don't feel guilty. I love that, right? You get all of the above. So, all right. So, as
Mm.
we start to wrap up, um, a question that I ask at the end of every podcast is, what in this conversation has been useful for you? So it's probably nothing that I said, because I'm pretty much asking the questions. And it's probably just you had an aha, or you observed something in the course of our conversation that was useful for you. So what was that for you?
Yes, I feel like, right now we are just in the pinnacle. We are the tip of the iceberg. There's so
Hmm.
much more depth to explore, and in the course of the conversation and just sharing my excitement about growing this brand, I noticed there's so much, unfulfilled potential that has not been
Mm,
met yet.
mm,
Like for example, we have partnered with Mickey Mouse and Disney to bring our snacks to millions of school children in schools and different families and households so that they learn to love and celebrate
yeah.
veggies and fruit from a young age. Like this is a revolution. Like this
Mm,
is a legacy that I want to outlive me for many generations to come, and get people seduced into eating fruits and veggies
mm,
rather than just a blank palette. When I got to US, I was really shocked because if I'm hungry in the middle of the night, there's only like fast food chains. Like
mm,
everything is one color.
mm,
There's not enough like variety or vibrancy in terms of the food that we eat here, which I think is really tragic. It's a
mm,
catastrophe. Like,
mhm,
is there any way to incorporate more colors in our
mhm,
diets and
mhm,
get people excited about eating fruits and
mm.
veggies?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that you had this experience today, as we've had this conversation of like, okay, I'm taking a moment, I'm looking at what we've done. I'm really happy about what we've done. And oh, there's so much more we can do. And just being reminded of the possibility for and really the movement that you're focusing on creating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And the possibility of us in every human being as well, in
Yeah.
terms of creating all these projects that fulfills us. I
Mhm.
think I'm doing this a lot for selfish reasons. Because if I don't have a creative outlet, I get
Yeah.
very restless.
Yeah.
I need to continue like creating and building, and that's my key happiness
Mm.
indicator.
So good. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share as we close?
Yeah, I'm really incredibly excited to celebrate veggies, and I hope to really disrupt this space and
Mm.
really focus on creating a snack brand that helps to resolve food waste and hunger, while at the same time celebrating the diverse culinary concepts and cultures from around the world.
Mm. Betty, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Whitney.